My name is Paul Jenkins, and thank you for taking time to attend our Innovation Zone tutorial exclusive for Innovation Zone members. This session is being recorded and will be put on the platform for you and your colleagues to watch again should you wish. We have a Q&A session towards the end, so this won't be recorded. So please don't be prohibited to ask as many questions as you like. And the Q&A box is the chat section is at the, I think, at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So ask any questions through that. I see everyone's got their mics off anyway, so that's brilliant. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to packaging stalwart Ian Schofield, many years experience in industry of Cabot, who will tell us a bit more about the future of sustainable packaging. So over to you, Ian.
Thanks, Paul. I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint, so don't worry about that. I'm just using PowerPoint so you don't have to look at me. And more importantly, it just gets a few points across. Now, we're at a stage where in 2 weeks' time, Drupa opens in Dusseldorf. And obviously, there will be a whole range of new packaging equipment coming to market and new printing techniques coming to market. And one of the biggest drivers coming is water-based digital inkjet. That's going to absolutely change the market, in our opinion. And I'm just going to cover digital in all its guises because it's not taken off too well yet. I'm going to go through the reasons for that and then go through why I think it's going to be a driver now, particularly with water-based. I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about Cabot, just in case you don't know much about Cabot. The first thing is, we are unknown really in the packaging space. It's something we got into because we realized that water-based dispersions and inks were going to be really important for this market for packaging. We've been in it for a long time and doing water-based dispersions for a lot of companies already, but not obviously in the packaging space. But it is a large company. It's 3.9 billion. We have 37 plant locations in 20 countries, 4,300 employees. And I come across them because I was working really hard on sustainability for retailers and still am. And the important thing for me was to find some alternative print routes, not just materials. So this is just one thing coming to market, which is going to change it quite dramatically. And just so you know that our plant that we built in Boston is EcoVadis Platinum, and there's only 1% of all plants in the world that's got that. So it's quite a task to keep at Platinum, but that's where we're at. And also we operate in two real segments, reinforced materials and performance chemicals. We're really particle scientists, that's what we are. And the important thing is we hold very strong positions in these, and this is global. So this water-based that I'm working on with our OEMs, we only sell our dispersions to the OEMs, just so you're aware of that. But what I'm doing is bringing this technology to end users so that they understand what's coming. And I'm already doing lots of print trials on a lot of presses around the world, not just Europe, around the world, for end users so that they can take advantage of this technology. So that's a little bit about Cabot. So we're here to stay, and more importantly, going to sort of grow around the world as water-based takes off. So the one thing for me, I've been using digital now for 15 years. In fact, I've been on the end user panel for a digital OEM before now. But I really think that digital has been on an island. It really has. It's really been shouting. We've got all this technology, and most people know it through personalization with the likes of Coca-Cola, but it hasn't really taken off mainstream, and there's lots of reasons for that. And I really believe we don't want to be in my middle shot there, which I've got a super tanker. We really want to be a speedboat, and that's what digital's really all about. So why is it not taken off? Well, the time for you, the end users, is really difficult. Blimey, how you spend your time these days in terms of deciding on priorities and what you do is really difficult. So time and interest for digital, it's not been great. The cost of entry so far for digital, all the presses that are around and the ink is really expensive compared with conventional printing. So that's another route. Now, I have printed lots of digital and I made it commercial, but it is really tough to do that when you look at all your packaging and all your substrates that you're using. A lot of the analog thinking amongst printers is still there. If you've got a lot of analog kit, then you're going to use it, and therefore trying to put analog together with digital has not always been easy. And there's some really good reasons why people haven't gone into digital because of all their analog kit. The finishing there's one thing about printing it. The next thing is then finishing it and converting it into all the different substrates that we have, like cartons and corrugate and bags. There's one thing about having all the printing kit, but it's no good if the finishing is slow. And there's a lot of issues with finishing on the back of digital. So digital generally has been used for small print runs so far, and the finishing is slow. Corrugate flexibles cartons, they all had a slow start. They've all had machines in for some time. There's 300 around the world, actually, but they've all been at a really slow start. And don't forget, this is really important, that only 1% of all items printed are printed digitally in the packaging market. Has there been enough collaboration and desire? I don't think so far. That's changing rapidly, but so far it hasn't happened. So I'm being quite negative about why some of these things haven't happened. The volume generally has been too narrow so far in terms of what it can run, and that's generally around speed, often about the DPI it can run at, your resolution. So that's an issue. Is the colour gamut wide enough? Well, it is if you put enough colours on the press, etc. But is it good enough for the brands? Has been a question. The special finishes, the varnishes you want, the coatings, gold, silvers, all these different finishes, can it do all these things? Was an issue. People had issues with this. And proving sustainability benefits, well, that's in a relatively recent 5-6 years ago, that really took off in what we were doing with all our packaging and the sustainability of our packaging. Printing really didn't come into that, but it is now. It's really important on the back of what you're doing on your primary materials. And the understanding of digitally with designers, with end users, has been slow and not educated on the potential we can get to. So these are all quite negative items. And also, I believe a lot of packaging teams until now have not at sea level. We haven't had, I was lucky in a retailer. I worked directly for the MD of a retailer. That's very rare for the packaging teams to be able to do that. But I'm pleased to say now that more and more people are exposed to the sea level because of sustainability and because of the drives on packaging to save money, etc., etc. So that's the negative bit over. I just want to now go on to what's going to happen to this market. Smithers came out with quite a few facts at the end of last year saying, well, it is going to grow. It is going to grow by 4 or 5% in Europe, and it's going to grow by 8% in the US. So it's predicted the US is going to grow very quickly. It is around the world also. There's presses going in everywhere. And in China particularly, there's a lot of presses. Japan, there's a lot of presses with water-based on. But this is just for cartons. It looks the same for all the others. It will be interesting to see where it goes, but the predictions are there. That's why people are building digital presses as we speak, and going to have a lot of launches in Drupa in 2 weeks' time. You're going to see an awful lot. So what are some of the sustainable drivers that affect what's going to happen on digital and why water-based? So these are all things you're probably well aware of, but it's important for you to just get a grip of them. So a lot of retailers have got red, amber and green rules of things you can and cannot use. So obviously we have to follow all those rules. It's important as they get and this is click and brick facilities, we have to make sure we follow all those rules in whatever we're doing, including what we're doing on water-based digital. All this legislation we've got, I could do a whole chat on it today, as many of you could who's on this call today, on PPWR, which has just been passed, EPR, single-use plastics, plastic tax, the carbon aspects that we're all looking at with Scope 3, all this legislation that's around us also has to be covered with whatever we're doing in this process. And I'm pleased to say we are doing. Everything's going to be refillable, recycled today. Compostable for a lot of the RAG rules for the retailers is not allowed at the moment because, as you know, there isn't the infrastructure in there to look after the waste. and the collection. But let's hope compostable at some point does come in so that we can use compostable packaging. But right now, we have to, for sustainable drivage, use refillable or recycled today. What we always say these days is paper and board first, plastics when necessary. That was quoted by quite a few people. Most people are going down that route. Obviously, we've seen now developments where print to shape. We've seen quite a few through the ThePackHub where they've printed quite a few items now, which can actually save packaging. Again, it's just something to be aware of for digital. It's obviously got to pass Swiss ordinance. It's got to pass UPA for inks, SADEX for, we treat people, BRC factories. All these things are still critical when we're looking at does it cover the rules. And obviously, what I'm seeing is water-based everything. I'm even seeing coatings, inks, varnishes. The whole thing is moving water-based away from fossil fuel. So this is just another item of going to water-based for the actual inks and the dispersions. Connected packaging also now is becoming, it's one of my pet beauties at the moment that I love to bits, is that the connected packaging with interactive QR codes and every pack being traceable, with packaging being the new media, is talking to us and telling us information, and we can use it in so many ways. It's now very much part of the sustainable mix to inform people. And the other thing is, I'm going to cover it in a bit more detail, is the launch system of how people are launching products. I've always launched products all my life. In a retailer, I was launching 200 lines a month. So you have to have a very good launch system to do this, and the digital process is very much part of that. And I'm going to cover that in a bit more detail. And obviously, this covers everything. The click and brick channels. It's really important that it's not just for the retailers that we see today, but all these new ones coming along, whether you're in fashion or whether you're in food. It's absolutely critical that we cover every area with this technology. So I'm now going to go on to why digital print. So this is important. At the moment, we all design digitally. We even do photography digitally. We do the artwork digitally. We do all the pre-press digitally, and then we print it analog. We don't at home because we've all got printers. I've got two here myself. We all print at home. Why don't we do it, for packaging? Well, there's some good reasons why we don't and haven't done so far, but there's now coming, and there's some huge advantages by doing it. I'm just going to cover 6 main ones. I've always bought packaging. You've always had to buy 10% more than you wanted because that was what the percentage was. Well, with digital, you don't. And you absolutely print what you need and what you need only. And I'm pleased to say that also works very well. You can exact numbers, even if you're just printing one of one and two of one or three of something. You only print what you need. We know there's no waste. So there's no long, extensive printing of 30 sheets, 60 sheets, 200 sheets before you get up to speed on cards. It happens straight away. The work is already done in advance. There's no waste, and there's no waste afterwards. And hopefully, you never chuck any of this packaging away. I've always had, in my career, lots of packaging I've had to throw in the bin at great expense. We never liked it. Nobody likes it. And today, waste is absolutely critical in every business. Everybody's attacking it. So again, digital wins over analog there. Obviously, printing plates. If you pay for printing plates and all the changes that's happening with legislation where virtually you never print the same job twice anymore, expensive printing plates and then disposal of those plates, whether they're on for litho or whether for flexo, are very expensive with lots of changes. And you don't need to do that, obviously, on digital. There is a large cost saving by doing that. Somebody's already estimated with me, who I'm working on, who do 200 changes a month, how much they're going to save. And it's pretty vital to them in the calculation when you're looking at digital versus analog printing. Obviously, you've got no minimum order quantity on digital either. You don't have to do. Now, cost is obviously a factor, and I'll talk about cost later. Cost is a factor, but the fact that you don't need to have a minimum order quantity is really important these days. And speed to market, my goodness, I have launched loads of things with digital where I virtually invented the product. We've got the product all sorted, but we needed to do the design and artwork in a couple of days and then print it in 2 days. We can do that with digital, and it's proven we can do it. But so Digital has got a mark there for speed to market. And as I've already mentioned, connected packaging and the QR codes that's coming, which will replace barcodes ultimately by 2027, even the DRS schemes we're doing now, where we're tagging packaging to see how much we are using, all can be done on digital. And don't forget, you can do an individual code by an individual pack. That has got massive advantages for some, particularly security. So they're just 6. I could have picked a lot more. In fact, if I do the lot more, it's here. There's a whole host of things which we believe digital printing and water-based brings to market. Obviously, getting all these over the line takes proof. You've got to prove it. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but for the environment bit, it's really important to understand when you're doing your costings of your total applied cost of printing, you've got to take account of your washing down, your washing of the inks at the machines, the plates you're using, everything's got to be looked at. And as I say, there's now plants being built which are just digital plants only, so you can do these comparisons compared with just using conventional means. So I don't want to go through all these. There's a lot of advantages. It's just good for you to understand what they are. I think we're doing all right for time, Paul. I think, yes, we are. The other thing, and I'm sure this is prompting questions, hopefully it is, the next thing I mentioned very early on, and this is critical for launch systems these days. Most systems are now very much coordinated. I had to do it in retail, and most people have done it in brands these days, where you can now see every aspect of your digital assets, where they're being used in marketing, where they're being used on your packaging, where they're being used on the website, but also the complete launch system, where the technical specifications are, what stage of product development's in. You can actually look at every stage, and it's open to everybody to make sure they tick off each point on that list as it goes through. And you can see very, very clearly where there is hold-ups, where the path is slower, etc. All digital is doing is speeding this process up. It's helping people get to market quicker. If you've got the material there, you can print it tonight. That's the key. And obviously, it's right at the end of the process, of the launch process, but it's really important to understand that all these systems are now linked. And it's not just the design, the artwork, the pre-press, it's all the work that goes into that. And how you're going to use those photography items in your marketing, how you're going to use them as your digital asset on the website. These are all linked now, so you can pick them off the systems. And that's good. And the buying teams, the technical teams can all see where every project is at any moment in time, including when it's printed, because they then have to go to the production runs. So I'm used to this, launching 200 lines a month. I was used to it. So the interesting thing these days, it's got better in every company, and everyone can have full visibility of the workflow. So when we come to colour, that's also a really important thing for digital. So we all know Pantone, everybody knows it inside out. Basically, digital colour is measured. Every aspect of digital colour is measured. If you're running to Delta 2 or Delta 3 and your LAB values, whatever you're running to, it's all measurable, whether it's on a screen, whether it's on a piece of paper, whether it's on a corrugate carton, whatever material it's onto, you can now get your colour gamut onto those substrates. You do it now. Obviously, we measure it all with spectrometers, etc. But also, if it's going on screens, if it's being printed around the world, the need to go to print runs have gone because the accuracy should be there. The proofs you see should be very accurate to what you're getting. And on digital, it's even more so. And once you've got those digital readings set, they should be the same every time you print it. Now, I'm printing a lot at the moment on water-based digital. It's interesting where you get, depending on the resolution of the press you're using, it's interesting on the results you get. But you know what? It's really close to analog, and in some cases better. And I'm going to go through gamut a little bit more later on. So it's just understanding how, colour is being measured, and it is being measured. And as long as you've got calibration at every stage, it's clear. This is just something that I picked up on in the last year when I've been going to exhibitions and things, that people said, oh yeah, it's great having a digital press, but it's no good if I can't convert it quickly and change. And you know what? You're absolutely right. And they were right when I was listening to this. This vision, though, on the left-hand side here by a company called Thim, and they have factories in Germany, I think in Czech Republic. I just picked it out because it was quite interesting, because they came out with, this is our vision of the Internet of Packs. No lead time, no minimum order quantity, no additional cost in a sustainable way. What a statement to make. So what they've done and what other people have done is obviously put finishing equipment on the back end that can speed up this process. And at Drupa in 2 weeks' time, you're going to see a lot more of this. So dies for corrugated, for instance, if you're buying them already, these are very expensive pieces. I'm still buying them. So they can be £1,000 to buy a die, and it can take 3 to 4 weeks for you to get that cutter back. The digital system takes 25 minutes and €80. So they're just some new machines coming along, which means you could probably do inline conversion much smarter and quicker. Some people are using hybrids, but generally, people have looked at the whole chain from start to finish. It's not just about printing this and whatever we're doing in water-based, all the way through to getting it out the door to you who's going to pack it. So, or the retailer is working with it. So it's really important to understand it's not just about the digital world that we're in for printing. It's now coming all the way through into all the dies and all the cutting and creasing to make sure that we make sure the speed is there. And as I say, at Drupa in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be enlightening, because I've already seen some of the things that's going to market. Also, most of the printers that are coming out is 1200 DPI. So you'll see in the 2 weeks' time again, and the presses that's already been released, you can do 12. You don't need 1200 DPI for most jobs. You absolutely do not. And it does slow the machine down a little bit if you're running at that. But most of them now coming out of 1200 DPI, that copes with anything that you're doing on photography or anything you're doing on packaging. And when you have the full gamut on the press, including oranges, including, instead of just having CMYK, and you do add other colours on there, like orange and violet, white sometimes if it's flexibles, you can get 92 to 94% of the gamut. So generally we're hitting all the colours we need to hit. Still a little way to go on some brand colours, but you know what? Generally we're getting there, and it's spot on when you measure it on your deltas. So I'm pleased to say that water-based has not affected digital UV or any of these other way. And also it's because they've all gone to a much higher DPI, you can hit a lot more of the spectrum you want to hit on colour. That's important to understand. I mentioned connected smart packaging before, because this for me is a game changer and is going to help digital packaging in a big way and print in a big way. So the technology needs no apps, if you didn't know this, and I know that the last lecture was Appetite Creative, I think, that Jenny did. So she covered this in great detail, so I don't want to go through it. But why is it important to digital? That's what I just want to get across, because no apps are needed. We can do a QR by every pack, and QR codes are going to be used by all. The safety and the traceability security thing comes very much into the digital space. The legislation that's changing so quickly, and we've got so many other things coming our way with PPWR and EPR. It's really clear what we've got to do. Every pack is changing. I'm still working for a retailer. Every pack that we're doing is changing at least twice a year, if not once a year. So all these things have got common issues with why you need to go to digital. And of course, it gives you a lot more consumer information and interaction. You can change the URL today to mention that the weather's going to be good for tomorrow to sell more ice cream, or give 10% off ice cream, or 10% off the wafers. There's a lot of things, or burgers. You can do a lot of things that you could not do before. And as I say, packaging is the new media. That's what is driving these changes. And obviously sustainability runs through all these things. If we don't in our jobs these days, anytime we're developing packaging and start any packaging development, if it's not got sustainability running through every decision you're making, it'll be very, very surprising. So I'm just going to make sure I finish off quickly now to get some questions on just some of the complexity, because everyone thinks, oh, it's really easy. You just get some water and you mix a few things with it, and you can put it on any substrate. Well, it's a hell of a lot more complicated than that, because water, by its nature, as you probably know, wants to, it can go off quite quickly. And does it last? Does it have light fastness as much as you need? And will it stay on the pack with ink adhesion for the next 5 years that I need it to do? All these are massive questions on inkjets, and all the different inkjet formulations are amazing that we have to do for different substrates. It's not just one fits all. So pigment dispersions are a massive part of this. And I can't reiterate that enough. It's incredible particle science that goes into this. I had to listen to at least 9 videos just to try and understand the detail they were going into, just to get this to market. So it's really important to understand there's a lot of work goes on under the scene to make sure that these are compatible, they are Swiss ordnance checked out, etc. And it is about the nozzle health. You don't want your nozzles getting blocked up. You want to make sure that you've got a bit of flexibility in the formulation when you need it. You need to just change some of the systems sometimes to make sure that you get the flow of the colour. There's a lot of things that go into these nozzles and to these formulations to make sure that all these new presses coming to market work right first time. It's not as though it's the first generation nozzles we're using anymore. All the new nozzles are incredibly sophisticated, and they're getting better at flowing. And of course, one thing we don't do with this technology is we don't touch the substrate. The good thing is with inkjet, we don't spoil the substrate in any way. We don't put pressure on the substrate. And in some cases, some substrates are going down in thickness because of inkjet technology. That's another thing that's coming quite clear in some of the work I've done so far. So it's just to understand how much is going on to make sure that these are fit for purpose and give you the colours you need and drop at the right drop height and are stable when they get on the packs and can be washed off when they're being recycled. And by the way, that's another subject. So there is a test called the Inkjet test, which is a test formed in Germany to make sure that it tests the speed and the quality of the water-based inks coming off. Not just water-based, every ink coming off. The Inkjet test is something that has to be tested and proved on all the machines that we're working on and all the substrates that we're working on. So that's an important factor. And obviously regulatory compliance, some of these are not going for food that we're working on, in the fashion industry and other things, but where it's food, obviously it's got to be Swiss ordnance because that's one of the highest sort of compliances you need to have. And it's really important that the Nestlé list with Swiss ordnance is adhered to, because that just happens to be a standard for food. So all these things we've got where we need it for food applications and for some of the presses that's coming to market in 2 weeks' time with the OEMs. Just check the time. Right. So just to conclude then, before I get any questions and anything that needs clarification, I just want to go through a few sort of critical factors. I do believe digital has left the island. I've been working with it a long time, but it definitely is not working on the island. It's got a lot of bridges out there now, and it's working really strongly to make sure that this is going to be for the future. Why would you go analog anymore is a question. Sustainability has supported this change. We've got to have LCAs to prove that this is the case, but LCAs take a long time, as you know. I've got a few on the go myself. They take between 18 months and 2 years, some even longer. But one recently has come out from one of the OEMs to say it's 40% better with energy than going through analog or conventional. So that's just one that came out only a month ago. So that's only good news. Water-based hits the less fossil fuel carbon drivers. So obviously where people are looking at scope 3, where people are looking to reduce carbon, it reduces that. Yes, water-based still needs drying. Yes, water-based has 2 real dryers at the moment. That's hot air, which takes energy, and infrared takes energy. But you know what? It's less than conventional. And what's more, new ones are coming, like radio frequency drying. And also these presses are one-person presses. So, you know, you don't need 3 people around to get them going and setups, etc. They're highly efficient presses, these. It falls in line with all legislation coming and brand changes. So that's really important to understand too. So, you know, it's again another factor. Speed to market's become more important than ever. And of course, cost, I haven't talked about yet. I will in a minute. Dynamic QR code supports new marketing initiatives, security, deposit recovery schemes, consumer benefit, and the fact that we can put an individual one on an individual pack just falls into the sweet spot. And connected packaging is here to stay. That's not going anywhere. And for me, again, that helps when we're doing, you know, competitions that are winning. You want to win things for security, allergens, all those things that is starting to happen on pack, interacting with our phone is again another sweet spot for this. The print runs are coming down, as you know. Everything you're printing, you've got fewer repeat orders than ever, more and more changes coming with legislation, ingredients, nutrition, pack things, even things that we're going to have to do now on EPR and on PPWR, on OPRL in the UK, or other things. All these pack changes are going to absolutely mean the print runs are coming down, you don't need as much stock, and you need few repeat orders. So it's really important to understand that digital is going to help that. And of course, the new presses are much quicker. So unlike the presses before, which were quite slow, the new presses are much quicker, and therefore that gives it more scope to be able to be used. I also mentioned about low-cost IT linked systems. There's less people in the process to launch the products. These are all part of design, artwork, pre-press, print, all digital. Less steps means less mistakes, without a shadow of a doubt. It's available now across all substrates, so it's not as though this is brand new technology which hasn't been tested and tried yet. All these presses coming to market this month, they're coming here for a reason around the world, and that's to be able to make sure we print more packaging digitally. So that's me. Just one thing in the middle there. Drupa is on. We're hosting a big debate with quite a lot of key people on the Thursday of Drupa, if anyone's going. The important thing for me is if you have any questions that come up after this, anything that you need a bit of help with, then I'll try and help you. And of course, I'm very open to questions, Paul.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll promote your attendance there within our next Innovation Zone newsletter, so that a wider audience can see that. A few will be definitely going to Drupa. Brilliant. What you don't know about digital print isn't worth knowing, and it got me thinking. Actually, one of the first times we met was actually at a digital. I think we met at a digital print for packaging a few years ago, and an HP event in Barcelona. So you are true to your word that digital has been very much a part of your work over the last 10 or 15 years. So one of your first slides talked about why digitally. The reasons why digital hasn't taken off so far, but I just think it's worth sort of reiterating that, just to sort of confirm, you know, why do you think that digital, you know, 1% of print at the moment, why do you think it hasn't taken off?
I'll pick 2 big things out there, Paul. One is awareness. So a lot of companies were not aware of what you could do with digital, and then when they were aware, it was very expensive to look at it because it wasn't integrated, you know, as I already said, with the back end. It wasn't integrated with the back end with analog kits and everything else. Some people made good efforts at integrating it, but generally it wasn't integrated. It wasn't like a book you were doing or marketing or point of sale material where there was no finishing to do. In packaging, there's always finishing. So it hasn't really been integrated with it. And the first presses that came out were very expensive to run and very expensive ink. Well, ink, as you know, is a critical part of any package, usually about 8 to 10% of the packaging cost. So these were very expensive to kick off with. It did the job. It absolutely did, because I did lots on flexibles, I did lots on cartons. But now on corrugate, for instance, it's bringing the cost down of printing those on corrugate quite dramatically. So I think it was just education in the first instance and knowledge, and it was also slow machines. And then the kit that everybody had to start with was quite expensive. Of course, a lot of people made them work and made it work very well in a digital environment. But was it the final answer? The new press is coming and going to shake that up.
Excellent. Okay, and a question from the floor, which is in a similar guise, but it sort of builds on it. What is the main reason for digital print not being established? Is it, you know, if you had to choose one, is it cost? They're suggesting, is it quality versus flex of reviewer? You know,
Not quality. It's not quality now. Quality's there now.
Yeah.
It generally will be cost because people won't have worked out the actual costs. And of course, if you're talking to a printer who's only got analog and maybe a bit of digital, he's going to decide how he's going to do that. But the new digital world means that we're going to have people who are going to be able to shake it up with just saying, look, I'm only digital, that's all I do, here's my price. So I think the price is going to change quite dramatically of digital. And of course, some of the jobs I've just done recently are between 10 and 20% more expensive. You say, oh, well, that's great, isn't it? Yeah, hold on a minute, but we're not got any plates. So when you start to calculate, and you're going to get it straight away, and you're only printing what you need, you're not going to throw anything away.
Yeah.
And by the way, you don't need a warehouse anymore because we'll just print what you need and put it on the line when you need it. So these things are starting to happen. And there's also one other thing that I'm going to throw in for all the end users is that I think digital print will go into some end users. There is no doubt about they're big enough to have their own kit. And that means security and all these other things that come with it. And there are some machines being built which can go just into factories to just print. So I think that's going to be another driver going forward, that you won't just have your converters doing it. They may well have the converters who's running the kit, but that will be in your plan. I'm absolutely sure that's going to happen.
Okay, so that's really, really interesting. And I've heard that discussion before. So how is that enabled? I mean, because
it's enabled quite well because these machines are getting smaller and you don't need as much finishing kit. And people are now driving to, it's cyclical, isn't it? Some people did have printers in 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It's just cyclical. It's coming back to sort of say, well, if we do it in-house, it's like design. Sometimes you do design in-house, sometimes you do it outside. It's cyclical. But what's happening with digital and water-based in particular is because it's clean and all these things that's going with it, it will fit very nicely into some parts or next door to it, or very close. And of course, that's another thing to save carbon. People are not going to print all over the world like they are now. That's not going to happen anymore. People are going to print closer to the factories. They have to reduce carbon. So that's another thing that's going to just drive it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that builds nicely into my next question, which is about sort of LCAs and sustainability. To me, that sounds like a really compelling objective to build an LCA around the lack of waste, the lack of transportation. You know, what has been done in terms of LCAs for digital compared to conventional to prove?
Well, they're only just coming out. This is the problem. They're only just coming out and they're still going. And guess what? There's still a lot to be started because, as you know, when you start an LCA, I know because I've been involved with them, but they can be an absolute nightmare because if one component changes in the mix, i.e. you change from one carton profile to another, or you change a substance of a carton or something, that changes your LCA. So it's very difficult to batten it down. So people are still getting used to them. As I said, the one that has come out a month ago, and it was on digital, thankfully, against analog, was that it was 40% more energy efficient. So that's just one that's come out. We're going to get more and more. I only think it's going to be good news when they come out. But as I say, understanding what the good bits are and the bad bits is just as important. You know, and what I'm dead against, as you know, is any claims that people should be making on anything on sustainability unless they've absolutely checked it out to the nth degree. There's been too much greenwashing, as we all know. So I am so keen to make sure that we do get the LCAs correct for this. And make sure that we do go through the total applied cost as well, because it's not just about printing and converting. This is about the design of it, the marketing of it, all that cost goes into. But if you can get to market quicker than anybody else, if you can beat the competition, that can be worth a lot more than anything you're paying for your digital print. A lot more.
Yeah. there's a comment actually in the chat. I think that is a key point for digital printing, enabling on-the-spot printing instead of traditionally done at converters. So you've sold someone there on that as a
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're almost done with questions. About colours, because I think that the opportunity to come up with the myth from years ago that digital wasn't as good as analog is I think it's now been completely dispelled. But what about special colours on digital? Can you tell me a bit more, explore a bit more about?
Yeah, well, it's all measured like it is now. It's measured like it is now with it, you know, and it's like I said with Pantones, you can hit the vast majority of Pantones you need to hit, and digital colour is actually much more accurate.
Well, I was going to say that was my next question. Is it more accurate?
It's much more accurate, but it's measurable. That's the key. It's measurable, and we're measuring it very effectively, and has been for some time. You know, HP very much drove that right at the start. It's all measurable. Everybody else that now works in colour make sure that the colour has got to be spot on. You know, that's like I'm the same. I'm going to a print run next week. I'll be checking. You know, all the spectrometer readings to make sure it does. And if you're reading to Delta 2, Delta 1 is obviously where you can't see a difference anyway, but nobody really can work to Delta 1. But if it's Delta 2 you're working to, then yeah, you'll know which one colours you can meet and which colours you can't meet on Delta 2. So it's there, and it's worth a chat with people, with your printers for sure.
And what about special inks like glow in the dark? That's a question.
So the interesting thing on special inks is a good one, isn't it? So guess what? We worked really hard to start with, just making sure that we get CMYK red, orange, violet, whites right. So special inks like glow in the dark will probably need a special ingredient on this press, I would think. So I'm going to check that out with our lab. Going to check that.
Well, if you find out, we can
because we're only doing the dispersion, but I guess if we could add something to it, I guess there's no reason why we can't do it. But I'm glad someone's asked it, because we need to sort it, don't we?
Excellent, yeah. Brilliant. An active question with a
absolutely. No, it's brilliant. That's a brilliant question. I'm sure we'll get others when people see this as well. You know, the people not here today, I'm sure we'll get other questions. So I'm very happy to answer them.
Yeah, brilliant. So one last question, sort of round things up quickly, is where do you think the digital print packaging market will be in sort of say 5 years' time? I mean, you talk about growth. And
well, if I go off what Smithers are saying, it's going to be 5% of everything printed in the probably in the next 5 years. Probably it might not get 5, it might get 6. Who knows? The US is going to be bigger because the US is much more open to digital printing than Europe is right now. And obviously a lot of the press makers can sell a lot of presses over in the US, so therefore they're going to go over there in earnest and sell them. There's already a lot of digital presses there, don't get me wrong, but there's going to be an awful lot more. So in 5 years' time, without a shadow of a doubt, I reckon 5% of everything around the world printed will be digital.
And that, if it's 1% now,
it is. That's a big change. That's a lot of machines to sell. But they're all going to go in. I know, I'm seeing them. So and there's an awful lot already converted, particularly in China. There's one particular press manufacturer who's already got 50 machines. He's already converted everything from conventional to digital. So it's happening. It's happening right before our eyes. It's just that people are not aware of it yet.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, you're doing a very good job to make sure that's not the case.
Well, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying doing it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Ian Schofield, thank you very much for your time. This recording will be available on the Innovation Zone platform for you to watch again and share with your colleagues. So I'd like to thank everyone for your attention and your attendance. And again, thank you, Ian, for an excellent whistle-stop tour on all things digital print packaging. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.